Good morning, everyone. We hope you're keeping safe and well. Welcome to ECA's third Coronavirus Impact Webinar. Today we're joined by regular Rob Driscoll, our Legal and Business Director, alongside special guest Stuart Young of the Government's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Stuart is Head of Stakeholder Management in the BEIS construction team. Rob and Stuart will be discussing some of the latest developments and the Government's official advice to industry, followed by a Q&A. Before we kick off, just wanted to signpost those interested to know more about the latest information on furloughing to visit our landing page, www.eca.co.uk/coronavirus, where you can read new ECA guidance and other key information. There is also a template letter there for use when travelling to and from site. Over to you, Rob, to kick us off.
That's right. Thank you and welcome. Today's webinar will be all around the government initiatives to support businesses, including ECA members, through the coronavirus outbreak period. Later on Thursday, there will be an in-depth analysis by my co-director, Andrew Elder, Director of Employment Relations, on the furloughing system, hopefully with guest appearances from relevant finance and tax experts. He will take you through that in detail, but as Mike said, the furlough guidance is already released, free and available to all through our website. It's important to, before we introduce Stuart, to realise that the BEIS team, which is the Department for Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy, is there as a construction unit to liaise between government and industry on ongoing initiatives to support business and to facilitate the dialogue between industry and government. If you're looking for certain answers about the wider coronavirus outbreak and whether government should make decisions, they may be a number 10 Downing Street decisions and therefore not within the remit of BEIS. If you're looking for advice on your individual circumstances, they may not be within the remit of BEIS. So what we want really is to find out what the latest thinking is. So far this week, we've had, and over the past 10 days, really, we've had for 45 million and over businesses, the Bank of England refinancing support initiative. We've had the coronavirus business interruption loans system introduced, the job retention scheme, the self-employed support, together with mortgage loans and all sorts of other systems, right down to the suspension of MOTs. So without further ado, let's allow Stuart to come in and tell us what the latest position is from within his unit of government.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So thank you, and thank you for letting me come on today's call. So I just thought it would be helpful just to kind of give you a bit of kind of context from where I sit. So I am heading up the stakeholder management within the construction unit for BEIS. So my specific role is around kind of collecting, coordinating and reporting up intel that comes through from our different trade associations and key construction companies. So there are a number, as you can probably imagine, there are a number of committees that are meeting. In particular, there is a ministerial meeting which is called the Economic Business Recovery Group meeting, and that is chaired by the Chancellor, the Deputy Chair of our Secretary of State. And we feed intelligence through to those discussions and other meetings, so the intel that you provide us with is directly seen by ministers. And we're also engaged in other ways, which I'll come on to in the slide. So it's in the slide separately. So just if we can just move on to the next slide. So just looking around the government's action plan. So as you'll probably be aware by the PM and other ministerial press conferences, this is themed around 4 stages: contain, delay, research and mitigate. So obviously early on it is around containment, trying to catch cases early, contact tracing and aiming to prevent the burden on the NHS. So we are now obviously clearly into delay phase, where everyone has been told to self-isolate as per the PM announcement. Obviously we've allowed out, as mentioned, for that one essential form of exercise, essential shopping, etc. And there have been other things that have been pushed out as well in terms of less winter pressure on the NHS and messages around the virus not working well in the summer. But that is the general kind of government's action plan set out around those 4 phases. So if we move on now to the next slide, please. So what is BEIS' role? So we are around kind of consulting, informing, advising. So just to give you some more context, the department's #1 focus at present is around supporting business and keeping it moving so that we emerge through this crisis and ready to pick up again. So around 25% of BEIS staff have now been stood down from their day jobs and entirely working on coronavirus work. From my perspective, I am doing 100% on coronavirus, as seen by my inbox. So nothing else at the moment, the day job has gone for the time being. So we are consulting and informing with industry in a variety of ways, and I'll just take you through those. So government has established an industry task force, so it's a construction industry task force, which is acting as a link between government and industry, and that is meeting under the auspices of the Construction Leadership Council, chaired by Andy Mitchell. I'm part of that group. It meets on a daily basis. Indeed, it's normally about an hour's discussion a day. It meets every morning and comprises of the 11 CEOs from the leading trade associations. We are also circulating intel daily as and when needed. So I have a list which is ever expanding of different trade associations who I communicate with in pushing out key information. So that could be, for example, information that the government has pushed out today on coronavirus, particular information about the job retention scheme, or any particular information that may be of help to businesses. And if you want to be added to that list, rather than waiting for your TA to send it through to you, if you want to send me an email, I'm happy to add you to that list. We are also participating in calls such as this. So I have spoken to, via webinars and conference calls, over about 800 people in the last week, just to kind of give some reassurance and to set out kind of what we are doing as an industry. There is also, as you'll imagine, ongoing email dialogue and various meetings. So I am dialing into daily meetings with #10, just to kind of get a cross-government perspective and input on the BEIS key issues. And we're also working with other government departments on key issues. So, for example, with the Home Office, some of you may have seen recently where the police forces are going out to construction sites and asking those site workers to move off the site, which that is incorrect. They shouldn't be doing that. So we are working with #10 and the Home Office to push messaging out quite strongly to Chief Constables advising against that. In terms of the information that we are seeking, this is around supply, demand, intel and asks of governments. So at the moment we are particularly interested in any asks you might have of the government in terms of financial or regulatory, but particularly financial. So are there any particular gaps in the market through the business interruption loan scheme and the job retention scheme, the self-employed package? We are aware of some that are emerging, but any particular asks you've got a government, please do feed them through to me. And equally, any intelligence on particular company situations, that clearly is treated commercially sensitive. And when pushed up the chain, some of the details are redacted for commercial reasons. But I would like to reassure you that any information that is coming through is making a difference. It is being fed into a huge, great big ministerial slide pack, which is a separate pack to the one I mentioned earlier, which is currently sitting at 70 pages. And that is fed into ministerial discussions, and it is being looked at and is making a difference. So that, I hope, gives you a kind of a snapshot overview of what the role of BEIS is. If we could just move on now to the next slide, please. So in terms of kind of construction, the current state of play. So a number of you will have seen the key workers guidance, which was published also on critical workers. So you'll know that construction per se is not included, although construction workers involved in maintaining critical infrastructure and supporting key public services such as hospitals are. I just want to make this very clear because this is quite important. The definition of critical workers at this point, it simply applies to the allocation of places in schools. It shouldn't be interpreted in any other way or having any wider ramifications than that. It is simply around allocation of places in schools. So everyone else in the industry can continue to work as normal. So you'll be aware that the government's advice on the construction sector is clear, that where sites can comply with with the PHEC guidance, they should remain open and operational. And there is a further bit of work we're doing around what will constitute key workers in the economy in the event of further restrictions were reduced. So, for example, who would need to work and what support they would need from the supply chain in the event of a lockdown. That would include include consideration, I think, from emergency plumbers to product manufacturers. If we just move on to the next slide now. I don't propose to spend too much on this. I think that's reasonably clear in terms of kind of self-isolation and what employers and businesses need to be doing, and the Prime Minister's constant message, which is still the key one, about washing your hands more often than normal and for 20 seconds. But clearly companies need to put in place risk assessments and social distancing measures of 2 metres. So just moving on to the next slide, there is obviously a series of support packages that have been put in place that apply to construction businesses. So there is the wage support scheme, there is the extension of the statutory sick pay, there is the time to pay, which is obviously the extension and around different schemes in terms of VAT and pay as you earn. And there is the rent, mortgage and retent support scheme, and clearly as well the job retention programme and the package announced by the Chancellor last week of self-employed. So there is quite a bit of support out there for businesses, but equally we are aware that there are some gaps still there, and all that is kind of is being looked at. So just to kind of conclude on the next slide about what we are kind of doing as next steps. Thank you. So our priorities for this week has been about, and is still continuing to be, is about ensuring information about available support gets out into the industry and any gap analysis in terms of the provision for that. So I am sending out daily, probably 3 or 4 times a day, various information to trade associations and key sectors, companies, about key piece of information. As mentioned earlier, we're also capturing ongoing intelligence about the market by subsectors. So that can include housing, consultancy and infrastructure, and geographically. And obviously, unsurprisingly, London's been particularly badly hit so far. But we are looking for ongoing intelligence which is being fed into those reporting commissions I mentioned earlier in my presentation. We are also issuing good practice guidance to sites, for example, around improving operations to minimise the risk of spreading the infection. And some of you may have seen recently the Build UK guidance around standard operating procedures, which was published by the Construction Leadership Council. In the next couple of weeks, we're aiming to take forward work on the construction supply chain and identifying which elements would need to remain operational in order to support essential business. I think, as an overview, that probably captures it. I would just say to keep feeding information into us. As you can probably see on the slide, the FIS, I've had a kind of number of conversations this and last week, but just to keep feeding information in. Happy to take questions now, but I think as mentioned earlier, where there are questions that I'm not able to respond to, I will confirm that, and we'll take a log of those, and they'll be fed back to me after the discussion, so I can kind of check in with relevant colleagues, both within BEIS and across government on those. I hope that's been useful, but ready for Q&A. Now, sorry, I should also add finally that I'm with you until 12 o'clock, and unfortunately I've got to go off to another meeting.
Okay, thank you, Stuart, and thanks, Rob, for opening us up there. Rob, just first things first, the government did announce some changes to insolvency in the past couple of days. Do you want to just update us on that before we get into the questions properly?
Yes, I can do. The insolvency rules have been slightly relaxed. So what they've announced so far is that there's something called a moratorium, which will be extended in line with the American insolvency procedures. Now, there's always been a moratorium in UK insolvency law. It's basically where your debts are frozen, either within the liquidation process or an administration process. An administration was invented in the 1990s to allow companies to enter into this frozen process where a third party could help them trade out of insolvency back into solvency. So at the moment, we're looking to see what extension they're going to do around this and see how that actually helps companies in distress. They've also said they're going to protect suppliers to enable them to continue trading during the moratorium. The only thing I can add to that is during the Carillion downfall, the insolvency practitioner, which was PwC, was able to issue its own contracts post-insolvency to carry on engagement with the supply chain. It didn't mean the supply chain got back any of the debts owed prior to the insolvency. It simply meant they were now owed payment by the insolvency practitioner rather than Carillion itself. So there might be something similar to that coming through. A new restructuring plan will bind creditors to that plan, but there's always been a key feature of UK insolvency that creditors can sign up to repayment plans, so they may simply extend and reinforce the rules around that. And then lastly, they're going to relax the rules around wrongful trading provisions. So directors who are trading innocently, but maybe naively, are allowed to make bad decisions. They're not allowed to make fraudulent decisions in the run-up to in the immediate run-up to insolvency processes. So they're going to relax the rules around that. However, from a practitioner's point of view, I'd probably add to that it's always been extremely hard to evidence allegations of wrongful trading in the first place. So this may not make a huge amount of difference other than comfort for directors that they can hold off bringing any insolvency practitioners in whilst they deal with the issues they're trying to face within the COVID-19 outbreak. Over to you, Stuart.
I think we need to take that question back in terms of insolvency. There has been an announcement out this week about kind of relaxing the insolvency law and doing some work on that, but that won't be led by BEIS. So can we log that question, please, and then take it back to me, and I'll feed it back to the relevant people, please.
That's fine, Stuart. Just one from Mike here. Obviously, you talked about the sites and people being able to go in and what the rules are. Could you just tell us what are the couple of main things that contractors should be doing to ensure they can go to site?
I think basically the clear policy from government is that sites should stay operational and open, but complying with the guidance. There's nothing further I would add to that.
Stuart, would retentions fall within the PPN on payment?
That is the PPN work is being led by Cabinet Office. So we need to log that and take it back to him. If you can log that, please.
Okay, we will. I'm going to just cover the ones I've seen. I've posted the links to the VAT deferral, which Ruth's pointed to, and the time to pay system. What will be uploaded on our website this afternoon is a complete and comprehensive note of all the relevant government guidance that applies to our sector. That includes the Bank of England for the 45 million plus, the CBILS, the self-employed, the statutory sick pay, the furlough, the mortgages, the personal loans, the MOTs, everything will be on that. And what we're intending to do is to update that as it goes. We're trying to use our LinkedIn, our Twitter, and all our other channels to notify members as and when government adds new points to this. We will take points offline, as Stuart said, and raise them with him. I think one of the big ones coming through our inquiry desk is that those above 250,000 looking for a loan are being repeatedly asked by the retail banks for security against the lending. I'm afraid the CBILS system as is that the government backs 80% of an overall lending cap to the retail bank. There are 40 retail banks, and then it's up to the retail bank on the front line to do the due diligence with individual applicants. I was asked the other day who wouldn't require personal security. Well, of course, that depends on who is the customer standing in front of them and what does their credit profile look like. So it's a bit of a tough question to answer.
Rob, one here from me, just in terms of the banks and how they're going about issuing their loans and how contractors can access them. Do you have any advice for contractors?
How to access the loans?
Yeah.
If you go on to the British Business Bank's website, and these links will be in the guidance note that we're going to put up this afternoon, there is links to eligibility criteria, links to the 40 retail banks that have signed up to support the system, and you can see whether it's your normal bank or whether you've got to try another bank, and each one's. There will be different approaches individually on the high street, even though there shouldn't be, and there should be a relaxation. They are ultimately on the front line, and if a customer didn't repay a loan, the liability would fall with that retail bank, not to the government. So there is a piggy in the middle position in terms of risk for the retail bank. So that each one, whether it be HSBC or whichever bank, will have their own application system, and you've got to see the individual bank. There's no blanket criteria process.
Okay, thanks, Rob. One from Gary Taylor. There is some confusion around whether sites can be open and carrying out work safely. Are we right to refuse to undertake work if it can't be carried out safely? And will we be supported by government via furlough, despite being a construction business?
So there's two questions in there. The furlough system, as I said, see Thursday's webinar for detailed furlough advice, but that is government supporting industry and all businesses in terms of those employees which no longer have work and would otherwise face maybe redundancy or some other similar scenario. The first one, which is about site opening, that's been extremely contentious. And if you want to have a look on our last Friday's webinar, which is downloadable from our website, you'll see that we took a very, very detailed contractual analysis approach. To repeat the high-level message, the Stuart Construction Leadership Council task force has put out, which includes ECA's representation within that task force, sites are open and able to continue carrying on operating, but that is subject to Public Health England guidance, safe and responsible travel to and from site, and the standard operating procedures and your normal responsibility to manage health and safety on site. One of the biggest issues for the week has been about contractual bullying, where clients or main contractors have perhaps been putting extreme pressure on contractors to carry on staying on site. One of the ways to deal with that is to ask them to confirm in writing to you that they are able to comply with the standard site operating procedures. And simultaneously, if you see things that are wrong, if you see dirty toilets, if you see unsanitary conditions, take photo and video footage of it, so that if you get accused of delaying the project for whatever reason, you have footage that you were not able to carry on site. You have also a responsibility under your employer's liability insurance to manage this risk. And if you are unable to carry out your works because of social distancing and other issues within the site operating procedures, you may well be forced to stop, but you want to evidence why you had to stop. Now, if that's in some of the standard form contracts, each contract will be different. There are grounds upon which you can claim time and money where an employer or a contractor has stopped you, we use the legalese impediment or prevention from allowing you to carry out your contractual performance obligations. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to take this webinar into an area that we've already addressed in a previous one.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Let me just pick up another question for you. If you're unable to pick it up, do let us know. This is one from Kevin Snowden. Our VAT is due for payment in the next couple of weeks, direct debit with HMRC. Are we right to cancel this in order to support our business as outlined by the Chancellor?
You'll see in the thread that I actually posted the answer to that VAT has been deferred. And thanks to Ruth Devine for reminding me of that. Again, I'm going to address it in my guidance note this afternoon. It's been deferred for 3 months, so you shouldn't have to. If you want to be rest assured of that, yes, you could go ahead and break the direct debit, but I wonder, in practical terms, whether you'd have to reset that direct debit again in 3 months' time, which you might forget to do. I don't want to land you in trouble in that sense. So you should find that HMRC are not taking the direct debits.
Right, one from Andy Prager, Rob. Is there a template letter available to send to main contractors requesting that they are complying with the site operating procedures?
There will be by the end of this afternoon. It was actually on my list of things to do for today. So thanks, Andy. That was one of the ones I was going to... It's going to be fairly short and sweet. I was dealt with in a different inquiry this afternoon from somebody where the main contractor had demanded the subcontractor confirm they were able to comply. The answer we gave was, yes, we can, but we're only in charge of our works. As the site owner and operator and manager, it should be them confirming to us. So yes, I'll get that letter up by the end of the day.
Okay, and just to confirm everyone, that'll be up at www.eca.co.uk/coronavirus. One from John Coleman. As the government are bringing in new measures continually, are there any plans to bring strident and immediate fines for late payment to deter any clients or main contractors that would see this as an opportunity to hold on to cash?
To answer the question that the gentleman asked about late payment, there is a PPN released by the Cabinet Office. They stand for Policy Procurement Notes. There is a guidance note on that on our website. It deals with what they call supplier relief, which is the ability for public sector clients to ensure business continuity through advanced early payments. If you're paid through KPI-linked systems for planned and preventative maintenance or reactive maintenance systems, it will allow your public sector client to take a much more proactive approach. I had a call from a client yesterday who was in a planned and reactive maintenance scenario and found it extremely useful to utilise both PPNs. In terms of the private sector, you already have a right to 8% interest on late payment in law, without nothing to do with COVID-19, and you could leverage that to ensure you get paid on time.
Right, thanks for that, Rob. Just looking through the questions again to see if we can find any new ones that people are asking about. Did you adequately pick up Ruth's question, Rob? It would be helpful if the guidance on keeping sites operational where safe to do so referred to construction activity than sites, as many clients in the private sector are nervous and feel as though construction sites are not applied to their work.
That's just for the fact that it applies to maintenance as well. I think it is, Ruth, because I know you cover that area. I think so. We've reiterated the position about sites opening on the top of our COVID-19 webpage, and I know that in the drafting it says open brackets maintenance. And again, I'm going to republish that at the top of my guidance note this afternoon on government positioning. and I've made sure that includes what we call hard FM, the maintenance area scenario. The way to work this is if your client isn't aware of any of these issues, whether it be policy procurement notes, the government announcements, or the site operating systems, site operating procedures, bring it to their attention. You very often still find, sadly, for engineering services, that when government talks about construction, it means construction and hard FM and maintenance services, even though it doesn't say it.
Okay, thanks, Rob. One from Ritis Orzolas. Regarding the furlough scheme, is there any update on whether or not you can rotate employees in order to maintain emergency cover?
I think as far as furlough goes, I would implore everybody to not just get specific narrow questions and narrow answers. Read the entire furlough guidance note that Andrew Eldred, who's the expert in this area, has put together on our website, freely downloadable to everybody. Go through and consider all the issues. I know that was a specific issue that was fed up to Stuart and his team at BEIS through the task force under the Construction Leadership Council that the ECA CEO sits on.
Okay, one from Tim O'Connor. Retentions are going to be a big problem. The government could help us if they made a decision to force the immediate settlement of retentions to avoid borrowing by members, especially with the possibility of many main contractors becoming insolvent. What's your general view on that, Rob?
I agree. So people are asking me more and more moral questions at the moment. My response tends to be slightly flippant. I'm a lawyer. We don't tend to deal with the morals. It would be useful if we are taking a macroeconomic perspective as both industry and government, that we looked at retentions and the release of them as a way of ensuring business continuity, because that is cash that is already represented against labour and materials delivered and installed on site. It has been raised at the task force. Going back to the PPN, the policy procurement note on public sector, you can get advanced payments. You can get continuity payments to ensure your survival through the COVID-19 outbreak, where you're dealing with either directly or indirectly with the public sector. So I know that's limited only to public sector. My reading of that is they could well then extend to early release of retention payments in order to ensure continuity of cash flow. I suspect that because government is made up not as one homogeneous mass of procurement, but of thousands of procurement points, if you're dealing with public sector directly or indirectly, you will have to have that conversation and bring to their attention the PPNs to ensure they feel empowered to make those decisions around your finances and releasing early payments to you.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Anything
One from Eddie Klebens. This may well be not your area of expertise, but slightly off topic. PPE, i.e. dust masks, are impossible to get for many reasons. How would this affect working on site regarding contracts and HSE's view?
I don't know HSE's view. I'm sorry about that. What you'll find on our website is a toolbox talk about COVID-19 and operating safely on site. But actually, this might come down to you doing your risk assessments and method statements, given availability of PPE on the basic task which requires the dust mask in the first place. Talking to my colleague who's more of an expert in this area, he was saying that dust masks are not the equivalent of PPE in terms of NHS level protection against COVID-19 in the first place. So I'm trying to address the point at which you might need a dust mask to carry out the task you're trying to do in your ordinary course of your works, or you might be requiring it to somehow see it as PPE against COVID-19 itself. And I understand it doesn't do that. It doesn't give you that level of protection.
Right, thanks, Rob. One from Jeff Hyde. Some technicians will earn over £2,500 on a 5-week month, even if we pay 80% of a 37.5-hour week. Can we pay a flat rate of £100 per day?
I'm tempted to say it's up to, your employees will have to agree to whatever you're going to pay them. And then this week in the Inquirer and other places, we're all busily getting our daily news feed. We're seeing announcements from people like Kia, who have actually asked their employees to reduce their take-home pay. To be honest, Jeff, I'm not going to fudge the answer. I'm going to say come back on Thursday to the webinar on furlough, and hopefully some of those more granular, detailed questions can be answered by people who are far more expert than me.
Right, thanks, Rob. Unless we've got any final questions, we're going to wrap up the webinar now. Thanks to everybody for taking part and for listening in today. Just to say, there'll be another webinar this Thursday with our employment expert, Andrew Eldred, who'll be discussing furloughing and the government's coronavirus business support schemes, including those to help employers with the 80% offer and what all that entails and additional support. So thanks again to Stuart Young of BEIS and Rob, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you.